Good morning, everybody. I'm New CENTER Maine Zach Blanchard, and this is Political Brew. I'm joined now by Republican analyst Ray Richardson and Democrat Ken Altschuler. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having us. Ken,
I want to start with the biggest story of the week. Former gubernatorial candidate and prominent political figure in the state, Elliot Cutler, was convicted on child pornography charges. He now has to spend 9 months in jail and register as a sex offender for the rest of his life. Already, advocates to prevent exploitation of children are saying this just isn't enough. And Ken, I want to start with you. What worked here, what didn't work in the system?
So it's astounding to think that somebody who came 1.5 percentage points from being governor was convicted of this. Also shows that you never know, right? A lot of people were critical about the sentence he received. Actually, when you look at the average sentencing in the state of Maine for this offense, it really is in line, 6 to 9 months. I think that's a pretty short sentence, particularly for somebody who's prominent, and it may not be fair to penalize somebody prominent more than somebody who's a common individual, but it does kind of send a message, doesn't it? Now, the issue is whether he should have been prosecuted in federal court or state court. I think he would have been treated more harshly in federal court, but that again is a decision up to who did the investigation and what county has jurisdiction, and all in all, it's an appropriate resolution, although very, very disarming and disturbing.
Right?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, I know Elliot. We've had dinner together at the Grill Room. He's probably been in my studio 30 to 50 times over the years. Stunned is, that's not even a word that's near strong enough. 80,000 images of children under 12 years old. I just can't fathom it. The Senate's, Ken's right, it's consistent, it just seems short, but he would have gotten probably years had it been prosecuted by the federal government. So he's 77 years old. I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what to say. We've talked about it some on my show. Disappointing, stunned. His wife is a wonderful, wonderful lady. I feel bad for the family. And my God, those children, 80,000 images. It's just hard to fathom.
And what's so amazing is, I mean, people have addictions and people have pornography addictions. It's very separate than being a pedophile.
Right.
And so the excuse, I had an addiction to pornography. Well, that's one thing. Having this pedophilia is something way beyond the norm. Just absolutely incomprehensible.
It is. It's beyond, I don't even know the word. There's no word in the language that I could come up with here or on my show. Knowing Elliot, what I thought, and then finding this out, I found out 4 days before it became public, and I still didn't believe it.
All right, changing gears now. Abortion once again up for debate in Augusta. People on both sides packed the State House this week. Lawmakers pulled an all-nighter to hear hours upon hours of testimony. Among the bills was one proposed by Governor Janet Mills that would, if passed, allow abortion after viability, so typically 24 weeks, if it's deemed necessary by a doctor.
Abortion for any reason is a deeply personal decision.
It's okay to say, I'm opposed.
And Ray, I know you're opposed to expanding abortion access,
Yes.
but are Republicans really likely to stop any of these from going through?
Well, when you consider the people in the horseshoe, the elected people that were on the committee, all the Democrats sponsored the bill, so it's going to come out of committee, ought to pass. I do think they ought to pause, though, just for a moment. There are some pro-choice Democrats who think post-viability is a bridge too far. And when you had 675 people sign up to testify, and the Capitol Police said 2,200 people came into the state capitol that day, and only 65 testified in favor of, it would give me some pause to think maybe this is a bridge too far.
Ken?
It's not a surprise that more people show up to oppose it, because those who feel strongly, the most strong about it, are the ones who are going to come and testify. Now, let me say the caveat. I don't know anyone who's pro-abortion. It's pro-choice. And the decision, I know you and I disagree on this, Ray.
Disagree on that.
But you know what? I believe it's a woman's choice between her and her doctor. And there are situations, very rare. This is a very rare situation. But it is a necessary situation where a woman and a doctor decide that it's necessary to end the pregnancy. And I support it.
But I got to say, in this bill, and I've read it on air, and I've read it many, many times, there are no safeguards, there are no boundaries, there are no restrictions. It doesn't say life or health of the mother. It doesn't say life of the baby if the baby was terminal in the womb.
Right.
It would be up to the doctor, but let's be honest here. I mean, some doctors are going to think like I do. Some doctors are going to think, well, this is no big deal. I think that's dangerous, and we can't just trust doctors. I mean, if you go back and look at the licensing board, over the last 3 years, the number of doctors that have either had their license revoked or suspended, I think there should be guardrails. I don't support any of this. I am pro-life without exceptions. But I think this is it's the most horrendous bill I've seen in my 38 years in Maine.
But Ray, I trust a doctor's decision, a medical decision, over a politician's medical decision. And the point is, who should be making those decisions? The woman and her doctor, not the politician.
And I'm going to leave it there. I think we're going to leave it there.
Okay.
This week, some House Republicans joined onto a lawsuit against Governor Mills and Democratic leaders claiming the legislature violated the state constitution by passing the state services budget along party lines with a simple majority and then temporarily adjourning to ensure it became law more quickly. Ken, I want to start with you. A lot of people are saying this lawsuit is a long shot, but it looks like, or does it look like what it is, gaming the system?
Well, of course it's gaming the system. That's what politicians do. And if Republicans were in charge, they'd game the system too. There's a 1940 Supreme Court decision that says it's entirely up to the governor to decide what circumstances she or he can do this on. It's a long shot lawsuit. It's politics. It's whether they should have or shouldn't have. They can and they did. And that's politics. Live with it. Republicans would have done the same thing if it benefited them to do so.
Well, except that they didn't, but that's okay.
They're not in power.
But, right, no, but I'm talking about when they were in power. But no, I think this lawsuit is frivolous, personally.
Wow.
Look, I don't agree with what they did. Governor Mills and the Democratic leaders said they were afraid there would be a government shutdown. No Republican legislator I've talked to has talked about that. So they wanted to game the system because they had big spending plans. But they didn't break the law. There's the difference. And the governor, let's say they had shut down March 31 and she called them back May 1. May 1, so that's a month. What's the difference? So I think this lawsuit is frivolous, and I think it's a bad look, frankly.
A big headline this week, the national debt ceiling. Republicans and Democrats just cannot reach an agreement here. Republicans want to raise it, but with some big spending cuts. Leadership is supposed to meet with President Biden next week. Ray, will Republicans budge here?
Oh, I think they're going to. I think the White House might budge a little bit. At the end of the day, this is one of the dumbest fights that we do. We spent the money, and now we need to borrow the money to cover the bills that we've already promised. I mean, it's not like we're borrowing money for new spending. This is to cover stuff we've already agreed to. I think the debt ceiling fight is crazy. Do we need to do something? Sure. We're $32 trillion in debt. The CBO projects us to go to $52 trillion in debt in the next 10 years. Something's got to be done. But let's face it, anyone in leadership in Washington, Republican or Democrat, just doesn't have the stones to do what's right. It doesn't matter. They've all been there forever, and we're worse off for it.
That's one way to put it. Now, State Treasurer Henry Beck, a Democrat, published this op-ed in the Press Herald this week, saying exceeding the federal debt limit would be bad for the U.S., for Maine, and for you. Ken, do you agree with that?
Of course. And Ray and I have talked about this before. This was never an issue. This became an issue all of a sudden last year in a political situation. And Donald Trump 3 times raised the debt limit, nothing tied to it. So this is all political maneuvering. They will make a deal because they have to, but this is a non-issue that very conveniently became an issue of political fodder, and it's really irresponsible and really could damage world economy.
Yeah, another big political issue. Congress is gearing up for what could be a major immigration crisis next week. Title 42 is ending, which went into effect under President Donald Trump at the start of the COVID pandemic, allowing border officials to basically expel migrants to Mexico without the chance to seek asylum. Ray, both Republicans and Democrats worried about this and working to keep those restrictions in place, but obviously this isn't a long-term fix.
No, of course not. We haven't had comprehensive immigration reform in this country since '86, when Ronald Reagan granted amnesty to 3 million people. For some reason, it is the job of Congress to secure the border and allow a big door. Ronald Reagan talked about it in his farewell to the country. If we're going to have walls, let's have big doors on them where people are welcome who want to come here. But we can't get these people in Washington to do anything that protects the people. 5 million people have come in the last couple of years. Like in Portland, we've taken people in, but we have no place. We have those poor folks living in the Portland Expo. I mean, it's immoral. It's immoral. So this is a really bad situation. It's going to be made worse when Title 42 goes away. But in no way, shape, or form does any of this solve any problem whatsoever. And until we find people with greater intellect and greater courage, we're going to be in this situation.
And Ken, do you think the Title 42 should stay in place or a restriction similar to it?
Well, what Title 42 was intended for really is not true anymore. It's not a health thing. But I was glad it was kept into place because I think Joe Biden was not handling the immigration situation appropriately. And we talked last hour about the shelters and homelessness. So many of those seats, those beds are being taken by asylum seekers.
Well, I want to be careful there. They're keeping them separately at the expo.
Right, but a lot of the
and then
beds
they're
are being
building a
used.
separate
Right.
facility.
So here's the thing, and I'm glad you said Congress, because one of the things Joe Biden should make clear is this is not a presidential issue. This is a congressional issue. And I think Kamala Harris handled it badly, waiting 90 days to go down to the border. But they're not articulating a policy because, as Ray said, they never have. And so until we have comprehensive policies, a quick review of immigration, asylum applications, and most people in this country legally are here legally on a green card and simply disappear and don't go back. So it's a complete failure of the system.
Yeah, and let's face it, Republicans don't want to solve this anymore than Democrats do. Some people believe Democrats think these people will eventually become voters. I don't know if that's their strategy. But for Republicans, businesses down south exploit these people. They live in the shadows. They're scared to death here, praying someone doesn't deport them. They get underpaid for jobs. So businesses that hire them get a competitive advantage against the guy who's following the rules. That's the reason the U.S. Chamber of Commerce never fights for immigration reform, because it doesn't benefit big business.
Yeah, never mind the tourism industry in Maine.
Right.
So, in case you forgot about it, the fallout from January 6th has not gone away. A jury in D.C. convicted several Proud Boys involved in the Capitol riots this week for seditious conspiracy. Ken, is this justice served, or?
Yes, it is. I think the Justice Department has done an excellent job on their prosecutions. It's very difficult to hear some Republicans understating the significance of the insurrection, which I think was an insurrection. And Donald Trump, by the way, praising the Proud Boys. It says a whole lot about Donald Trump's character. But yes, prosecute them to the full extent of the law. This organization is, frankly, it's a white supremacist organization. The less power it has, the better. So good prosecution, good verdict. I was very happy to see it.
White supremacist organization run by a black guy. It's the funniest thing in the world. My attitude has been the same from day one. I don't agree with Ken that it was an insurrection. If it was the dumbest one ever. But it was a riot and a stain on our Capitol. I think everybody involved should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, and that has been my place. If they can prosecute these guys and find them guilty, do it and throw them away. This isn't America. This is not what we do. This is what they do in other places. So while I don't agree it was an insurrection, it was a riot. It was disgusting, disgraceful, and good. I'm glad they're going away to jail.
And I do want to note that the Proud Boys is very much a hate organization.
No, but they are run by a black guy.
But they're still an absolutely hateful organization.
White
the leadership is
they are a
white.
racist
The leadership is
organization.
white.
the
Whatever
guy that's
leadership
been on
there
TV
is.
was
So,
black.
anyway,
in any case, yes, I'm not a Proud Boy supporter. Let's be very clear. I'm glad they're in jail. They attacked my Capitol.
All right, and finally, winners, losers. Ken, we'll start with you.
So the winners, I think, are the people of Maine for having spring finally here. It's 70 degrees according to Todd Gardner. We're having beautiful weather. Time to get out and enjoy yourself. So the people of Maine, to me, are the winners. The losers, I have to say, are transgenders. And I want to say this because, it seems to me that they've become a new target for frankly, hate, in my opinion. And they're a small minority. They deserve protection, and instead they've been attacked by our legislatures. And I think they are the losers of the week because of their persecution.
Right.
Well, I'm going to agree with Ken on the weather. We turned the heat off in our house, and it was 44 degrees yesterday. So I'm going to agree with you. It's nice to have some spring. Yeah. I don't really have a loser. I mean, we're Americans. We're all winners.
All right, Ken Ray, thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time on Political Brew. The Morning Report is back right after this.